Hey all you gamers, game makers, beat crafters, audio waveform weavers, and the general public. Thank you for tuning in to Audio XP, your new favorite game audio podcast. There are a million things that you could be listening to right now, but you chose this. And for that, I am thankful. So if you're new to the show, welcome. My name is Cole. I am a game developer. I do sound effects and music for video games. And I started this podcast as a way to meet and learn from people in the video game industry. So normally this show is all about developers, talking with developers, going super in-depth on technical nerdy stuff. But if you didn't catch it from the thumbnail, today's going to be a little bit different. Instead of interviewing another developer, I'm going to be interviewing one of my all-time favorite YouTubers, Seanson. Now, if you're not familiar, Seanson makes incredibly long videos about incredibly obscure video games, mostly of the PS1 variety. And even though he's different than my typical guest, I thought it would be really fun to bring him on for a couple of reasons. Number one is in his in-depth review of games, he always gives special consideration to sound effects and music and how they affect player experience. So I really just wanted to hear more of his thoughts on that. But secondly, I wanted to bring him on because he has one of the most striking visual styles on all of YouTube. And everything about his videos, from the thumbnails to the scene transitions to the little audio cues, everything just looks and feels great. And so since most of my audience are sound designers who are looking for jobs, and one of the number one ways we do that is by making video content, things like audio reels and all that business, well, I thought it would be fun to hear from Sean about how he developed his signature style. And my hope is that us audio folk could walk away with some fresh inspiration instead of, just the stock lower thirds on Adobe or something. Definitely not talking to myself there. So Sean is exactly as chill and fun to talk to as his videos would lead you to believe. And I really can't wait to share that talk with you, but there are just a couple of quick business items that I want to get out of the way. Number one, I would really love to break the 100 subscriber mark before this year is over, 2023. So if you like this show at all, could you just do me a favor and pummel that subscribe button, share with your friends, share with your social networks, and if you find yourself at a wedding or a funeral, and maybe just during the quietest part, go ahead and ting your glass, stand up for a toast, but instead of giving a toast, just talk about how much you love Audio XP. I don't think that's asking too much. But I do have one more really cool way that you can support the show, and that is a merch store. That's right. I created some of my very own fun designs, and you can get them on everything from t-shirts and hoodies to hats, magnets, stickers, bags, you name it. Select a design and you can scroll through my Redbubble shop and pick something that you really like. And we all know Christmas is coming. So if you have any game audio nerds in your life and you want to help them show the world just how much they love incredibly niche things, well then stop over to my shop and get them something that they're really gonna like. Tell them Santa sent ya. That's not actually gonna do anything, but it does feel fun to say. And the last order of business today is each episode of this show, I like to feature the work of a different composer. So everything that you're going to hear today, besides that theme song at the beginning, which was by yours truly, is going to be by today's composer, and that is Pumodi. So Pumodi is a composer and sound designer that I met doing a sound design competition, and not only was he a joy to work for, but he is a super duper talented composer. Just one look at his discography and you will see how absolutely stacked it is. Has everything from fully orchestrated bangers, action, epic soundtracks to just happy, fun, kind of Earthbound-esque, video game music-y kind of stuff. So I really highly recommend that you check out his discography. All the links will be in the description of the episode, and if you're curious about what song you're listening to, you'll be able to see it here on YouTube with labels and all that cool stuff. All right, with all that business stuff out of the way, here is my interview with the great, the mighty, the Irish Seanson. right. Game face, you ready?
All right, I'm pumped up. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, right on. Cool. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I have a very special guest for you today. They call him the Mr. Beast of Ireland, YouTube sensation, Seanson. Say hello to the people, Seanson.
Hi, everybody. I'm the #1 Mr. Beast in Ireland, officially. Wow, what a great introduction. That's awesome. I'm now going to officially use that going forward. If there was ever anything that I think was going to bump me to the next level, I think the Mr. Beast of Ireland is the way to do it.
So in keeping with the Mr. Beast name, are you going to be just giving away like thousands of dollars worth of like obscure PS1 swag to the listeners?
Oh my God. If you need like weird manuals and like bizarre controllers, that would be it. You know, I could do like a whole competition where someone wins like a very rare train controller for Densha De Go, or like a Dance Dance Revolution pad, or the Game of Life controller. I feel like that's the kind of thing people want, right? That's like billion view territory, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I can just see walking up to some family in need and just give them the gift of like a DDR pad or something.
Oh my God! Like something ridiculous. But like, I heard your son just learned how to walk. Well, let's see how quickly he can learn to dance, and then that would go on. Yeah, probably wouldn't net me the most bonus points in the world, but you know, controversy creates cash, as they say. Not that I'm in that market in the slightest.
So I wanted to have you on because I have a tremendous amount of respect for the work and the effort that you put into your videos. Let's see, I stumbled across your channel, I want to say about a year ago, and it's really, I was just like, I can't believe this exists. This is such a perfect fusion of things that I love. It's got, first of all, for the people who may not be familiar with your work, you do extremely long deep dives into obscure, mostly PS1 related games, but you have a wheel that you spin with a list of games that maybe caught your eye at one point or another, and then you play them. You do 3-4 minutes, I guess maybe a little longer on your other videos, of what the game is like, whether it's amazing hidden gems or just absolute trash, but you kind of give it the spotlight. But what really caught my eye is the design of it all. You have a great eye for colors, fonts, the graphics that you use, and even the music that you weave in there, and like the little sound cues that you do. It's just all so well done. And so I thought, even though my listeners are typically more developers and audio people, I really thought it would be fun to just ask you about some of those things and kind of hear about your process.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Look, all of that first off was really kind of you to say. I really appreciate kind of the, I don't know, that you pay attention to that sort of stuff, you know? Like, really, that's kind of my little, all that stuff is my favorite aspect of the video, kind of making it weird and uniquely myself in its own sense. Like, obviously, there's a lot of inspiration that's taken from places, but yeah, that's awesome. And I'm happy that, you know, people pay attention to that kind of stuff and that kind of resonates with them. So yeah, it's cool. Cool.
Awesome. But I do have a tradition on my show. When I interview sound designers, we usually play a game where we each bring a sound that we've made, and we try to dissect and see if we can guess how the other person made that sound. But we're going to do things a little bit differently today. I've prepared a couple of challenges, and yeah, we just want to test your knowledge here. So, but I do want to be fair. So I have one for me and one for you. It's a total surprise. So I want to give you, as the guest, the opportunity. Would you like to be put on the spot, thrown in the deep end, and just start with your challenge? Or would you like me to take the challenge first?
I'm going to step up to the plate. I'm going to be brave.
Right on.
I'm going to try show my knowledge here. It's either going to go off flawlessly or I'm going to crash and burn hard. But I think
yes,
I think now is the time. So
this is why they call you the Mr. Beast of Ireland.
That's why I'm the Mr. I never step down.
Never step down. All right, cool. So I thought it would be fun to play a little game called Can You Guess That Sound Logo? Now, you are a person who is well-versed, very well-versed, probably the most well-versed in the PS1 library. And so what I've done is I love those segments in old video games where like the logo of the company pops up and it plays some little accompanying sound or music.
Oh, yeah.
Such good Sonic branding. They don't do it like they used to.
Iconic.
Absolutely. So I've picked a selection of sounds that you're going to listen to blindly, and you're going to try to guess which company it is. Now, to make it fair, I've tried to make sure that these are companies that you have covered before. And then I've also tried to make sure that, because I noticed when trying to find these that some of these didn't always do the same one every time. So I tried to make sure it was something that you actually did cover at least once. So let's test that Irish brain of yours. I don't know why that came out as vaguely racist. I didn't mean anything by that. I just meant,
look, man,
like a normal brain.
You can listen, man. I'm a walking stereotype. It's hard, you know. Anything you thought about the Irish, probably true. You know.
So you can go ahead and check in your folder that I sent you on Discord.
Okay.
And then when you're ready, we'll start with number 1.
Okay. This one, it's a very nice sound. It's a very, very, very like pure logo opening, kind of really relaxes you into it. But for the life of me, I cannot recall what that one would be. It gives me the feeling, right, that it kind of has the nice dreamy sound of a studio that would make a role-playing game. At least if I was to judge by that sound alone. So, oh god, I can't even pluck from my head what that could be. If I was to take a guess, could it be a Tecmo?
Not too far off. I'm gonna do a big reveal with Actually, no, I'm not gonna do that. It's too much work. The big reveal is it's Human Entertainment.
Oh, Human Entertainment.
I like this one too because it actually the like intervals they're using, that nice little descent. It sounds almost exactly like the opening of that one Jamiroquai song.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
You know what? Like that is so. Like as soon as you mention it, that's all I can think about now. So if I ever play a human game going forward, I'm just going to be thinking of Jamiroquai.
Yeah,
as soon as it pops up. But no, that's great. That's a nice tune.
Yeah, that's a good one. If you had to give that logo a number rating.
Ooh. I'm going to use it as a baseline for now. I would say off the top of my head, I think that's an 8. It could go a little higher. It could go a little lower as we go through them. But I would say that's a pretty nice one. Maybe really good, but maybe not enough to like worm its way into my head forever, as we've clearly just found out.
Right on. Okay, whenever you're ready, you can go up to bat with sound number 2.
Oh, all right. I know this one for certain. This is a classic. Oh my god, I'm seeing like 3 logos in my head right now with this one. I think that could be Konami.
You're right. You nailed it.
Yeah.
Yes. This is kind of the updated like PS1 version, but yeah, they use that same little arpeggio for all of their historical like Konami logos. So great year. Yeah.
It's great. I think out of all the games, that strikes me for that. I feel like I played a lot of God, what's that Olympics game? Track and field. I feel like I played a lot of international track and field, and that's the game that triggered that for me for whatever reason. But yeah, cool. Good that I remember that.
Nice. And if you had to give that one a rating?
I mean, this one is, I think for how short it is, it's a very powerful sound. I would give that, I'd give that a 9 personally. I'd give that a 9. One of the greats. Yes,
absolutely. All right. Next up, sound number 3.
Like, I'm going to keep saying every time I hear this that this is familiar. Obviously, it's familiar. I've played through these games. This, to me, right, the sound of it sounds kind of like a shooting, almost like a shooting star. It sounds like it's the letters of the logo or the title just being shot into place. So let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? 5. Okay, is that one Tecmo?
No, you're super close. It's Takara.
Takara, God. one extra, yeah, there's one extra letter in there. You know what's gonna happen? I'm gonna keep saying Tecmo until I lose every single thing.
That's what I did on my high school exams, and it didn't work out very well. So actually, none of the answers were Tecmo for some reason.
For some reason, oh god, not woodwork again. This is techno. This techno is not working out for me. Yeah, that was a pretty cool one. Like, is it? Am I correct in saying that the sound kind of matches up with the letters?
Yeah, I was gonna say I like your methodology for figuring that one out. It brought you pretty close. Yeah, it's now. To be fair, though, it seems like Takara has several different, like wildly different variations. So I kind of knew that one would be a little more challenging. But yeah, great work.
Sweet.
If you had to give that one a rating.
Ooh, I would give that a 7. I think that sound, for me at least, I think would be better accompanied with the visual. And I know if it's to combine it together, but I think if we're to take it solo, it doesn't really have as, I guess a personality to it. I ain't gonna be humming that little jingle in my head, I guess you could say.
Yeah. They say with branding, if you can draw it easily, it's a good logo. If you can, for sound, if you can like hum it to your friend at the schoolyard. Although, I don't know if you could do that with Konami either. But anyway, but you're right. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna give this one a 5. Personally, it might seem a little bit low, but I'm saying 5 is like average. It's fine. Oh,
that's cool. That's good. Yeah. I think as this goes on, if I retreat back to the scores as we go along, but I think that's a fair score from that point. I tend to be a little positive with my reviews, so everything usually gets a score too higher than it deserves.
All right. Well, when you're ready to get hit right in the feels, you can hit track number 4.
And what a bop. what a great one. And you know what the worst thing is? I still can't remember what that goes. Like, it's awful because I have all the knowledge of this stuff in my head locked away somewhere. But I think whatever is connecting with the sounds is just not matching up with the my mind's eye of what I envision for them.
What? You mean you don't have the same absurdly specific niche talent that I have? I'm offended.
This is why I don't have the podcast. This is why I don't run the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is okay. This is good. I think, this is my version of brain training where I need to hear this to kind of reignite something in my head because it is in there. It's in there somewhere. That one to me, it kind of has a... is it Traveler's Tales?
It is. Hey, there you go. Looks like somebody passed high school.
I was like, if I waffle on speaking long enough, it'll give me enough time to dig deep and find it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
very nice.
Cool one. Yeah.
Personally, I'm going to give that one a 9 just because it's a little long and it's not as flashy, but dang, is that a great song.
It's great. And I think that the Traveler's Tales logo has it's long. You get a lot of nice kind of visual depth out of that thing because I remember correctly, it kind of goes through some water and it goes up through the logo of I'm not sure if it's a fox or whatever the creature is that's sitting on it, but it's such a cozy logo full of character, and I think that music really complements it very well.
For sure, yeah. All right, this next one, if you get this one correct, I think it might be safe to say you might be a bit of a nerd. So let's see how it goes.
Awesome. All right, number 5. Oh my God. This is another one that I've definitely heard many times over.
I wonder if some of this is actually repressed trauma, because some of these games aren't exactly the most pleasant experience. So your brain's like, no, I don't want to relive this.
You see, this kind of has the element of the Cryo logo to me, because Cryo is the slow turn into space and whatnot, but it's too short in my mind, I think, to be the Cryo logo. It's not like a Phoenix Games logo or something, is it?
No,
I don't even think they have music.
This
I don't
one's,
even think they went that far.
This one's Appaloosa.
Oh, Appaloosa.
Go
You
ahead.
know what the worst thing about this is, right? I've literally, for the current video I'm working on, I've been playing an Appaloosa game. And so I was like, why does this sound so familiar? That I've heard this about a couple of days ago or something. No, that's crazy.
Nice. But really, really good guess on the cryo, because I almost included that on the list just because I liked how it sounded. But I wasn't sure if you would know, just because I don't think I saw any specifically PS1 games, and I just didn't want to throw you something that was like way off the radar.
Oh, that's okay. I think of all the bad games, they're the ones that have stuck. I never forget that that opening over and over. But yeah, no, Appaloosa is a good choice there.
So I like this one personally. I like this sound a lot because it honestly kind of reminds me of something that I might get if I screwed around with presets in like the massive synth, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
It's just really kind of cool sounding. So despite the fact that I'm not the biggest fan of their output games wise, I think it's a really cool sound logo.
This is a really this is very familiar to me again. You're right. This is a really good one. Sweet. This is a pretty good one. Is that a claim?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah. I was like, I feel like I've heard this one quite a bit. And funnily enough, right? I'll tell you, one of the game I was playing that had the Appaloosa logo in it was South Park on the PlayStation, which was an Acclaim game that was ported by Appaloosa. So I got the double shot of the Acclaim into the Appaloosa in that one game. So oddly enough, those two back to back, I only just experienced back to back. So at least I remembered one of them. I would give that I'd say that's a nice 7 for me.
All right, so we got 3 more for you, and then the last one is a curveball. So we'll see. It's the bonus super hard challenge. Whenever you're ready.
Ooh, that's exciting. Cool. Let's check this one out. Oh, I feel like this is a pretty easy one. Okay, I had an idea in my head immediately, and then I started to doubt myself and think it was something else. But I think the first one was correct, so I'm going to say that's Activision.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Something about the little sound at the end trailed off is going to make me think it was EA, because I feel like the end of that Activision one sounds very similar to the EA logo, where they would say "challenge everything." It sounds very similar to the way it trails off. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that kind of threw me for a loop there. But got a big Activision, big Neversoft logo vibes ahead of that thing, like a Tony Hawk or Spider-Man's about to play. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that one's burned into my brain because I had I had Toy Story 2 on the PC when I was like, I don't know, 5 years old or something. And yeah, like pretty much all I did was play the first level. So it's pretty burned in there.
It's a great level.
it's good. Yeah, Andy's house, man.
Rules.
What would you give that one?
I would give that a 5.
A 5.
I think it's another one where I think the visuals of, because it's like concrete crumbling, you can see it smashed in. I think that complements it. But once again, it's more of a visuals. I think carry the sound in a lot of ways.
Alrighty, so we got 2 more.
Okie dokie. Let's check out number 8. Ooh. I think out of all of them that I've heard today, this is the one that sounds the least familiar to me. Would you consider this a tough one, or is this like a low-key easy one that I'm just missing?
I kind of felt the same when I was picking it. I thought this is a company that you've absolutely 100% heard of, but I couldn't really recall hearing the logo in my childhood or otherwise. So it was, to me, it felt like it was kind of a toss-up, like depending on your familiarity. So it's a big company that you'll definitely recognize, but I personally didn't recognize the logo. So,
okie dokie. Taito?
No, it is Hasbro.
Hasbro
Interactive.
Hasbro Interactive. Yeah, no, loads of games would have had that logo in it.
Right. So maybe I thought I did my research well enough, but it's possible that maybe it was only a variation they used one time.
Oh no, it's cool. I mean, this is the thing. I feel like I've played, a lot of Hasbro games over the years. Naturally, like every board game, and every Hasbro license, quite a lot of them. But I don't know why. Like there are some that I just don't necessarily focus super hard on, and I feel like Hasbro games, when I boot them up, I'm not like, yeah, big game company ready to absorb this logo that I see all the time. Right. But I could see, man, I could imagine if someone played like a lot of Monopoly back in the day, they'd have that burned into their eardrums for sure.
Yeah. I like this one because it's the most like peak 90s CGI where it's just so abstract, like needlessly abstract. It's the one with the floating spheres, where they kind of like whoosh through the screen and then they form that Hasbro logo. It's like, this is awesome. What's about to follow this is probably not awesome.
Some dude had the time of his life putting together this logo, and he's like very proud of it. He's like, I don't care what happens after this. My work is done,
Yeah. Yes. What would you give that one?
I will also give that one, I think, a 5, just based on sound alone. Nice, but maybe not super memorable.
Right on. All right, and the final round. Now, this one is a curveball. So let's see if Mr. Beast can handle it.
Well, here's hoping. Let's find out. Shh. Yeah, bro. Gracie Films.
Yes.
Immediately. Holy.
Nice.
What a banger. If you're about to be shooshed beforehand, something's about to drop. something hard.
I used to watch so much Simpsons as a kid that whenever I got shushed in real life, like immediately it just triggered that.
Oh, what a great little tune. I haven't watched like modern Simpsons or anything, so I don't know if they still use that. But if they've ever lost Gracie Films, I mean, what's the point? What's the point?
To me, out of all the ones on this list, that is a certified banger. 10 out of 10. I love it.
Absolutely. So simple, so powerful. Like I don't think I've seen, Gracie Films in any other show. I'm sure they made other stuff prior to The Simpsons or whichever, but that's just like, it's intangible to my love of The Simpsons. It's such a big part of it. Just like the theme song, that little bit at the end, it's everything.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I'm so glad. This is why I wanted to have you on, because if anybody's going to appreciate the random, it's not just gaming, right? It's the extra stuff around gaming. It's the feel of the manual. It's the sound of the the Hasbro logo washing over you. It's the whole bit. So
sure. Absolutely. Look, and I appreciate there's dozens of us out there who get it, who are weird into that stuff, and it's a beautiful thing,
It is. It sure is. So the next sound challenge, very well done, by the way. You did a great job.
Thank you.
The next sound challenge is, I fancy myself a bit of a sound designer. So I asked you to choose a retro game sound effect that you would like me to try to recreate. I think I got pretty close, but I'll have you listen to them back to back, starting with the original and then mine. And then let me know how you think I did.
This is cool, man. I'll let you know. I've heard this sound effect countless times, and I think I sent you an example of it. You could see that people go to the effort of making massive sound effect videos just for this game. So I think people care about this sound somewhere.
There's a lot of pressure. I feel it. Yeah.
There is. I think so. So I'm excited to see how you did. Right. So let's listen to
somebody's hand is hovering over the unsubscribe button right now. Like I can feel it.
It's like, I swear to God, if you do this, it's done. All right. So I'm going to check out the original sound. classic, pure like sound effect disc volume 1.
Yeah.
Appears in about 100 games on the PlayStation, from the most weird, obscure thing that should never have it to like the most this sound was made for this game kind of thing. It's a classic. It's classic for weird people who play a lot of PlayStation games, let me tell you. All right, so are you ready for me to check out yours?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. Ooh, I like that. It's got like a kind of a sweet spin on it. It's the same sound, but it's got a bit of whimsy to it. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah, I have a dial on my interface that actually says whimsy, and I just went ahead and
Oh, you cranked up the whimsy. You cranked up the whimsy to 10, and you're like, here we go. Now we're cooking. Yeah, that's cool, man. So how did you? How long did it take you to make this little beast?
Probably about 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Because I am a composer, but I'm not a trained musician. So the hard part for me was really just listening over and over to what notes are actually being played. So since we're all nerds here, I'll give you a quick breakdown of how I redid it. So basically, I started by listening to the sound over and over and just trying to identify what instruments am I hearing. So there's obviously some kind of chime. There's a harp that's pretty easy to pick out. There is also some flutes kind of doing some little tootly doodlies in there. And then the last thing that's really, really hard to hear until you slow it down, but there's some kind of like, I want to say vibraphone. But so the only way I could make this work was I slowed it down to like quarter speed and just really picked out every single note with my piano. And just tried to like find those software instruments and kind of recreate it. So not super duper difficult to do in terms of like having to synthesize sounds or anything, just, little software libraries. But the hard part was definitely picking out what's going on there. So I think it ended up being about 6 layers. And then the other hard part was the timing, because there's not really any discernible like tempo like a music piece. It's just kind of this wash of...
It's a lot happening very quickly.
Yes. The one thing that I think I would do differently if I had more time, I just didn't want to spend more time on it. I did put I put like a plugin on there that kind of emulates the degraded nature of tapes. And I think that kind of darkened it up a little too much. So if you listen to the original version, it's a little crisper and like a little brighter.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I could see what you mean, or hear what you mean, should I say.
But if I wanted to spend all day on it, I could probably get it a little closer.
That's cool, man. I think, because when you said like it took you like 2.5 hours, it's if people aren't really like super familiar with the process of making music, like it's incredibly time consuming to do this sort of stuff, especially when you're like digging with like electronic stuff as well. There's so many, such a wide range of options available to you, and if you're like into it, you'll spend so much time looking at the most minute detail trying to get it right that it's just you could waste hours away on like seconds. It's crazy, but it's completely the norm, So when you said 2.5 hours, I was like, yeah, that's about right. That sounds legit.
Yeah, if anybody's ever dabbled in music, especially electronic music, has the sound of like hunting through snare libraries like burned into their brain. It's
like 4 a.m. and you're like, what happened? I was gonna go search a few snares. How did this happen?
Yes, I usually end up with like a folder of like maybes, and then I'll go back through the maybes and be like, what was I thinking? These all suck.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
So Sean, your very first video is a 3+ hour video of you reviewing and ranking every single Disney PS1 game. Now, obviously, it went well enough that you decided to continue making videos. So could you tell me just a little bit about how you got into YouTube and how that first video made you go, yeah, I want to keep making 3+ hour videos?
Yeah, it's a pretty good question, to be fair. One that sometimes I'm not even sure if I know the answer to myself, but I'm happy to dive in. So I guess it all started, like I'm a long time watcher of video game content, I guess you could say, from like the very beginning of YouTube, even like before YouTube and stuff, like as a kid growing up who didn't really have the internet. The second I got the internet in my teens, like I just wanted to find out about everything that I have missed throughout my years of playing games. And naturally, as you go along playing stuff, you learn a lot about the history of games, the past, all the consoles that we didn't have over here in Europe and whatnot. And, I've been just watching that for God knows how long at this stage. And you always kind of think to yourself, oh, maybe I could do this. Maybe I'd be good at doing it. But naturally, like most people, if you have a job and you have a lot of things going on, it's very hard to sometimes sit down and dedicate the kind of time to do this. So it was just one of those things that I always pushed to the side over the years and went, my time has passed. I don't need to do this. And that was all well and good until the pandemic came along and gave me a tremendous amount of free time being locked up inside, A lot of my friends have started picking up streaming, which was the hot thing at the time. I think streaming is like a more accessible thing for people to get into. You just get a camera, you sit down, and you just chat and play some games. And I was watching all my friends do this stuff and I was supporting them. And I was like, hey, why don't I try maybe look into this YouTube thing in a project and see if I can maybe make something. And for whatever reason, right, during this time, I'd been watching a lot of very, very long videos. I put on a YouTube video when I go to sleep. The longer, the better. I sit there, I watch it, I learn a bit, I fall asleep. I repeat on a cycle every night for months on end. And I had seen a lot of videos that had been like very long, but covered a huge amount of things. A lot of games in one, people covering all the games on like the Atari Jaguar, for instance. And you're like, wow, you're bound to see something weird here. People ranking like the worst, the best of certain lists and things like that. And what I gathered from this, right, was that people are making a lot of long videos that talk about a lot of games. But I also love like a really long video that focuses on just one game. So in my mind, I was like, instead of doing like a lot of games very briefly, why don't I try do like a long video, but give each game a full review, so to speak. Actually try to play through the game and not just get like a quick overview of it, but instead try to understand what is this game, what's good about it beyond just, the overt things that you're seeing. As you get a bit further into it, are there anything exciting to learn about it? How about, the music and stuff, the visuals? What can you really get out of this? And for whatever reason, I was on this sort of kick of, games from my childhood. I played a lot of Disney games, as I'm sure most people who are roughly around the ages of 5 to 10 would have been during the 90s,
Right.
And a lot of those games, like, always are very near and dear to my heart. I haven't played all of them, but the ones that I have played, I'm still very fond of to this day. And I thought to myself, well, look, I haven't seen anybody really make a video like this for the PlayStation, bizarrely, which is considering how popular the console has been. In my mind, I thought, I'd love if someone made a video on all the Disney PlayStation games. And it just wasn't there. No one had made this video. And I was like, look, I'm sitting at home. I'm doing nothing. All my friends are having a good time streaming. I ain't doing anything at all. I'm like I'm not going to say like socially awkward, but the idea of sitting in front of people for long periods of time, 5 days a week, is just not my vibe,
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to go try make this video. And for whatever reason, right, I don't know why I decided to do, it wasn't initially meant to be 3 hours. I just went, I'm going to go find all the Disney games. I'm going to research, I'm going to look into this, and I'm going to put it together some way, somehow. And the only kind of guide I had in my head, or the only knowledge of any of this, was I know what I like. I've watched enough YouTube at this stage, like 13 years or whatever of watching YouTube video content, to know what I think a good video is, how it should be put together. And then I use kind of other influences of things that I enjoy. I'm a big fan of game shows. I'm a big fan of advertisements, idents and TV, little visual things. I was like, I can just have a bit of fun trying to like do transitions and stuff with that as well. So I just said, you know what, I'll wing this whole thing. I'll get all these games, I'll play them, I'll write about them, and then I'll sit down and just figure out how to make a video. So I didn't really have like any editing experience. I didn't have any experience with like recording a voice and trying to figure out how you would make that well. I just decided to wing the whole thing. And I'll tell you now, if you're trying to do a project of this scale with zero knowledge of how to do this stuff, it's not going to go very well. We had a lot of like trouble in the editing process, a lot of trouble in the audio process, a lot of trouble in almost every aspect of it. But because I had so much time and I felt like really determined just to do it and just prove to myself that I could finish it, that I will just somehow figure out a way to make this work. You know, just to prove to myself, I suppose, I can do this.
Yeah.
And in the back of my mind, I had this idea. I was like, when I seen it ballooning in size, right? I was sitting here like, I like make like test renders. So like if the video is about an hour done, I'll do like a render of that hour, and I'll just sit down and just watch it, and I'll go, okay, that's watchable. That's okay. I'd watch that. And I asked my partner, who's like not super into games, and I was like, does that seem okay? She's like, yeah, seems fine.
Okay.
I'm like, okay. I'm like, that's cool.
Right.
So I just went back and forth doing that for the longest time until eventually a video came out, and there was this idea in my head where I was like, this video was so long and so meticulously crafted that it has to do well. There's no way this video can't do well. And I put it out, and it just, nobody watched it. I put it out into the world. It got like 10 views in a week, and I was like, well, this is it. It's over. It's done. This is the end of me. But like the whole thing with doing that is that I learned so much in the process of over the course of, I think, the near 3 months it took me to make this video.
Wow.
I was still working like a 9 to 5, but like from my house.
Okay.
Like my apartment. I lived in like
Gotcha.
a little 1-bedroom apartment at the time in Dublin, and I'd finish up work at 5. I would like close the laptop, and then I would just take out my keyboard and just go to work in this, because if I wasn't going like, if I wasn't out visiting people, if I wasn't doing like social activities, sporting activities, going to the gym or anything, for a while I was more than happy to play games. But I think, you know, if you get too much of a good thing, you start going a bit crazy.
Yeah,
You have to try use an outlet elsewhere. So I went, cool, let's do that. But at the end of that, I got that put out. I just remember like watching it and sitting down and thinking, I can't believe I made this. I think I probably could have made it a lot better, but I'm very proud of what it is. I think it was, in my own words, surprisingly watchable.
Yeah,
I remember like getting to the end of it, I was like, yeah, that wasn't bad, you know? That was okay. I'd watch. Like, I kept saying to myself, I'd watch that. And I think a lot of it comes from my own judgment, where I'm like, the only person I'm trying to please is myself. And if I think that if I look at something and go, yeah, that's okay, that's good, then that's probably enough for me. So that was a wild experience to do. Got to play a lot of cool games, got to play a lot of bad games. But I think the thing that struck me from it is that I got to discover a lot of things that personally felt very gratifying to understand about kind of this weird aspect of Disney history, about the type of games that were coming out, the weird Japanese Dance Disney stuff, the
Yes.
little weird obscure kids like play controllers that came out with it. It was just like, that whole experience taught me so much more than I could have really imagined. And I don't really think there was anywhere else like out there that I could see a video that would teach all of that to me. And at the end of it, like regardless of whether I got views or not, it kind of helped me get this appreciation for, I think you can create something and just be completely satisfied with, you know, just doing something for you and putting something out there and being proud of it. Even if people don't watch it, at least you can go, well, I gave this my best shot and I'm happy with it. And when that was done, I went, wow, I'm never going to do that again. And then a day passed, and I went, holy shit, I feel the urge to do this almost immediately. And it just kind of just never stopped from there, I guess.
You got the bug. So that is interesting, though, that it wasn't. Well, I mean, in some ways, I can see why it wasn't immediately a hit, only because of the unbelievably niche like subject matter, not the quality. But it is interesting. Now you're sitting at over 20,000 subscribers, and some of your more well-known videos are approaching 500,000 views. So when did that start to change for you a little bit? When did you start to notice you were getting a bit of traction?
I think the first time I got a bit of traction, and I think this is something that kind of helped increase the bug a little bit.
Okay.
Was that in the first few videos I was doing, I kind of had an idea of what, I think a YouTube video should be, and I was trying to kind of structure it in a familiar way, like a lot of videos that I've seen before. And then at one point I did a video, I think 2 videos back to back. I did a video on the game Pandemonium 2, and that process, I completely took a different route with how I structured the videos. Essentially like a guided playthrough, so to speak, like a long play, a cut down long play where I talk over everything. And for whatever reason in my head, I was like, this is just the video that I'd really like to see. And I had a lot of fun experimenting with it, and I thought this is kind of weird. I don't know if people are going to like it, but for a small YouTuber who was lucky to get 100 views on a video, that one got like 1,000 views pretty quick. People were sharing it on Reddit. You'd have people going, "Oh, I seen this on Reddit. This is a really good video." And I think when you see people come back and give you praise and like return to other videos, something kind of clicks in your head where you're like, "Oh, wow, I think I might be onto something here. Something might be going good." So I decided to do another video on Small Soldiers, the PS1 game, which is like a favorite of mine from my childhood, and one that I think one of the first times I really, really focused on the music in a game, where I basically talked about how Michael Giacchino, the world-renowned composer, got his start in video games, and one of the first games that he created an orchestral soundtrack for was Small Soldiers.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I talk about how his music in that game completely elevates what would be a pretty generic, like third person, almost Quake clone, to being like one of the most epic games ever. Like the first level of this game has a song that is so good. Like I think it's worth playing just to hear that song. And beyond that, the rest is pretty great. But I think you can get so much out of just playing that. It's incredible to see it, because at that time, games just didn't really have that level of production in their music. You know, people didn't have access to an orchestra. Like they were making games with Spielberg. I think it was DreamWorks Interactive. So they had like ridiculous budgets to do stuff that just wasn't present. And you combine that with the CD format, I was like, it took me aback. As a kid, I wasn't like a music guy until a bit later. But it was the first time I remember hearing something and going, wow, this is like struck something in me. It's, when I played it, I made my hair stand up on my body, that kind of thing. And I focused on that a lot. And similarly enough, a lot of people kind of vibe with the direction I took that. And it kind of gave me the idea where I was like, oh, I can just kind of talk about whatever I want. I don't have to structure my videos like what someone else is doing. If I want to like talk about the music and highlight that in a very particular way, or if I want to do like a weird kind of transition or use some like musical bits to kind of add a bit of flair to it, I was like, I don't know if people are going to like this, but in my head I was like, this is good, right? This sounds cool. This sounds good. Just go with it. And I kind of stuck with me to that point. And from there, it was just like every video I put out seemed to get a few more views, seemed to get a bit more of an audience. People would pick up on it on Reddit. And it just kind of kept going from there. And you got to keep in mind, right? I think like success is a very, very variable thing for a lot of people. Like I remember the first time getting 1,000 views on a video and thinking, wow, this is insane. It took like it would have taken like nearly a year to get 1,000 on a single video, which at this point now is like, if I got 1,000 in an hour, that'd be pretty crazy. And it does happen, which is insane. But I try to never lose sight of where I started and where I put all this effort into like such a long project, and I was getting like 10 views. And now, there are actually people coming to watch like the most bizarre things that I could put out, even though I'm still kind of doing me. I'm not really trying to cater to a mass audience or whichever. I can just kind of do weird things and people vibe with it, and that's always a great feeling to have. Once you see people coming back for the video on video, you see people happy to see your stuff come out. That's I think that's what it's all about, really.
Oh, that's so awesome to hear. Now, I've been very curious for a long time, and especially hearing about how you started with the Disney one and then started to move on. How did you develop your whole style? I would say it's very holistically awesome. You've got excellent choice of fonts, excellent choice of colors, the graphics, the pictures that you use, the way you weave it together with familiar video game sounds. It's just everything is just so right with your videos. And I'm kind of curious, can you talk a little bit about how you went about piecing that together and developing that? Because I haven't seen all of your videos, but I've seen a lot of them spanning back to the beginning. And it seems like that tightness was always there, even if it morphed a little bit in the beginning.
I guess when it comes to the aesthetic and stuff, when I was making the Disney videos, kind of where I first got to grips with any sort of graphic design or even kind of tinkering about with the audio and stuff, you know, I was always thinking to myself, I just want to have like in my head the thing I kept saying was there just needs to be like a cool transition, a fun little transition that kind of displays some information about the game and then moves you over to it. Because I love when you get these like little transitions in TV shows and other things that introduce things. And I love when they're very much tied to sound. Like a lot of my inspiration for you know, direction and visuals and stuff. A lot of it comes from like Edgar Wright, who and Chris Cunningham, who both all of their visuals. A lot of what they do is very heavily tied to sound. You make things move to the sound of stuff. And I would spend a lot of time, you know, diving into the soundtracks of these games or diving into various video game soundtracks. And especially when I'm dealing with the PS1, I listen to a lot of music from various PlayStation games of the era. So I feel like I have a pretty wide knowledge of the type of music that's out there and some really like cool stuff. And I often hear like a track or a piece of music and I go, oh, I think I can make a cool in time motion with that, or vice versa. I could create something and then think, oh, I'll find a great song to go with this. And I just basically mess around with it until it works in my mind. If it's not good enough, I keep messing around with it until it is good. The issue that I had when I started out is similar to editing, similar to trying to do, you know, edit my voice and stuff. I had no graphic design experience whatsoever. You know, I think in the past, I remember trying to do stuff in Paint. I hadn't even considered Photoshop because I'm never going to need this. I don't use it for anything. So what I did is I discovered the website Canva. I don't know if you've used or heard
dude,
of it.
that's so funny. You're telling me you make all this on Canva? I love
make everything.
Dude,
I make
Canva is awesome.
I still make everything on Canva, and it's probably going to annoy a lot of people, right? But the issue I had was I don't really have a lot of skill using these kind of big programs, and I didn't want to get myself bogged down, you know, spending loads of time trying to learn one thing that isn't necessarily a huge part of the video. So what I did is I just got to grips with Canva, which is one of the most like easy to grasp UI stuff. Everything about it is super easy. You know, you can make things really simply. And I was like just dragging like images of games into places and trying to put like, I'll put a line here, I'll try this font, or I'll put this thing over it. And I just kept playing around with it. I got really into the art of just gluing all these different pieces together and seeing what comes out. And even nowadays, even when I make like a thumbnail or whichever, it's pretty much just sitting down, looking at it and just trying different things until you see something and go, that looks pretty cool. What if I try this effect with it? Oh, that looks pretty cool. A lot of the time it doesn't work. A lot of the time it's me sitting there for 2 hours going, this is awful. This is terrible. This is the worst. But somehow at the end of it, I always come out with something I can go, oh, it looks pretty cool, actually. That's not too bad. And a lot of this, right, I have to thank for just like years of reading and studying about a lot of, like, I don't think I know how much graphic design of the 90s and noughties has really like wormed its way into my brain. But I used to love it, and I still have a lot of fondness for it nowadays. Like a lot of the graphic work of the Designers Republic, who do a lot of the stuff for Wipeout and stuff, where they use kind of a very striking minimalist style, which is just like lots of lines, lots of elements, lots of fonts. And I learned very quickly, right? You could have like someone could make a black background with a font, and it could be one of the ugliest things you've ever seen. Or you could have someone make a similar background with just a flat color and a specific font, and it's literally just two minor changes in between what they do. But I think a lot of it comes down to just being able to identify, does this look cool or does this not look cool? You might not always get it right, but it's similar to what I said earlier. I feel like a lot of this is just trusting yourself to know, does this look good, and trust your own taste level. And that's kind of what it's been doing. It's just being, I guess you could say I've gotten really good at Canva. And a lot of the stuff that I do with videos, you've probably seen, there's a lot of like images and cuts and everything. All of these are just a flat image that stays still for a little bit, and then it changes to a different image. Like, I don't know if you've seen the loading screen thing that I have during the wheels and stuff. That's just like 8 images right beside one another that just swap over as the music goes, or to that. It's like you can make something pretty cool with just nothing, is what I thought to myself. And I was like, there are people who probably do this a way tougher way, and they probably do it with a lot more flair. But I was surprised that I could make something that I thought looked cool with having almost no ability whatsoever, just trusting my taste level, I guess you could say, to kind of carry me through it. And what's great about doing it in something like Canva, or doing like series like this, is that you can also use a lot of these as templates. If you need to make a new video, you kind of already have your stuff ready to go, and you need to make a few minor changes to existing images, and you can insert them into a new video. Because as you've mentioned, a lot of these videos are quite long, which is a preference of mine. I like them long. I know it's not to everybody's taste, but it's what I dig, you know. And a lot of the time, you don't want to be bogged down with creating all this artwork, because there's a lot of stuff you have to do. You know, there's the writing, you got to play the games, you got to create the art pieces, you got to record your vocal work, you got to edit your voice down, and you got to actually put the whole thing together. And having like a nice setup where you can effectively go in and pull what you've already got, adjust it ever so slightly, and then repurpose it for other videos, it allows me to get stuff out a lot quicker to people without, you know, I suppose, losing the edge. Because I think for me, it's a fun part of my work, and I think it's something that people kind of enjoy as well. And I want to make sure that stays a focal part. Like, there's this sort of fun, quirky presentation to it, and it also lets you highlight some great music as well. Doing it, like the music that I chose for my intro, where it just says, like at the beginning of every video, I have a little bit of Jet Set Radio. I mean, the bass line, one of my favorite tracks. And I put that there just because I love that track. And I think just the it works for like chopping the image up. Like I said, it's just 3 images that flash up to the beat of the music. The music I have for my title, which is the Seanson, and then the name of the video, that's just something I plucked from the YouTube audio library. And that was a case of going through like maybe like 1,000 songs and just going down. And then I heard that and I went, this is really good. I really, really love how this sounds. And for whatever reason, I knew from that point, I was like, I need to somehow get this into a video. I didn't know it was going to be my theme song, so to speak, you know, but it was just the thing where I heard it and went, I love the way this sounds.
Yeah.
And there's always this thought where you're like, is this noise maybe a bit harsh? Is it a bit aggressive for people? Is it a bit unusual for like an opening? But I think people are like, wow, that's like, it's a really like standout piece of music that people really like. I get asked a lot, like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, it's just something off the YouTube audio library.
I actually dove in. That was one of the first things when I first came across your videos. Was like, I love this opening song, and when I found out it was just a YouTube library piece, I was like, that's incredible. It almost kind of the way the bass morphs, it's kind of hard to tell what it is that you're even hearing. It's almost like a weird like bagpipe or something, but whatever it does, it gets me right in the feels. I love that track.
Same.
So I think it's so cool to hear. I love what you're saying, because especially in game development, it's a big deal to be able to just use the tools that you have, because you may not, especially if you're an indie developer, you don't always have access to like the best new stuff or whatever. It's just really well thought out creative decisions with what you have. So that is so cool to hear that Canva music library, but you make it work so well.
And that's the thing, you know, like I could have spent a lot of time learning how to do all these complicated programs. I could have spent a lot of time investing into that, but I just wanted to create stuff, you know, I just wanted to get stuff out. And I think it's important to note that like anybody out there, you don't really need a huge skill set to like create stuff. I think if you can just play around with like some free tools, just experiment and just get used to them, you'd be amazed at what you can create at times. And I think that's what everybody should do. They should challenge themselves to like just, you can make something for like the purpose, like just the most basic thing in the world that suits a purpose, but just have a little fun and make it your own. And you'll be amazed at what you can do a lot of the time.
Yeah, man, really, really cool stuff. And it is very striking how different your style is, especially compared to other gaming content. Like everybody's got the whole like watch mojo, it's got, I don't know how to put it. It's like very much like, okay, yeah, you've got the stock like Adobe Premiere library or something going, and that's fine. It serves its purpose. It does its job. I just really enjoy your content because for you, same with me and my obsession with like sound logos and stuff. It's like you actually put the work into making every part of it special, including the things that people don't normally necessarily pay all that much attention to. So I applaud you for that.
No, thank you. And I appreciate that you appreciate it. It's always,
Yes.
always nice. Always nice to hear.
Okay, so your videos are long, to put it mildly, and I love that. But I am curious, how long do you spend on these videos making one? Like, I'd actually just love to know, as technical as you want to get, like, how are you actually creating these videos from the moment of I have an idea to it's out? What's that process like?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it can vary greatly between video to video. I'd say like the most consistent videos that I do are the wheel ones that you previously mentioned, which initially started out as 3 games per video, but now have kind of ballooned to 4 games per video. And then the reviews themselves have kind of ballooned from maybe 4 to 5 minutes to about anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the game. And the process of like playing through a full game, I mean, first off, you got to play the game. Usually what I do is I sit down. I've already got the structure for this in place. So with the wheel videos, for example, the whole gimmick of that was I really like game shows. I like kind of having this element where you don't know what's going to happen in a video. And I also like having this element where you can get people involved with the video. So the plan here was just, I don't know what I'm going to play, but I'm always excited to play anything. So it's fun for me. Every time I do this video, there's a bit of surprise for myself. What I'm going to play. That's going to be real cool. And then I added eventually the ability for people to vote for one game. So every time somebody watches, there's a chance whatever they picked, they're going to greatly influence the video, and they're going to get to see a full review that they basically made happen. So I thought that'd be fun. But the process to actually make it, what I would do is I would sit down, I would play through the game in its entirety. Now, I play through all of my games on an emulator, DuckStation specifically. I do have like the real hardware and the ability to capture it, but the process to do it is just so much easier on an emulator. You can have so much more control over the game. If you want to, highlight a cool item or a weapon and you don't want to use it up for the rest of the playthrough, or you don't want to use it, you can like control being able to video those bits and edit it. It just makes your life a whole lot easier, especially when you're doing something like the Disney video where you're playing 36 games. It just, right. It helps not cost you a lot of money, so to speak, and it makes it a lot easier and neater to do. And every time that I finish a game, what I would do then straight away is I would beat the game, kind of have my thoughts about it, and then I do a bit of research into who made the game, what other games did they make, how does that relate to the game that they played, just to have a bit of backstory and help kind of educate me a bit more on why the game is the way it is, or does this link up with something else I've played? Is there like an interesting pathway that kind of shows their growth as a developer, or the other games that they made? And then I just write down the review. I sit there. I almost do every review in one sitting. My writing process is that I try to just think that I'm talking to someone about a game. So I sit down, and if I was in a room with someone and someone asked me to tell them about a game, it's almost like that, you know. Try to not do it too serious. I'm not trying to be too analytical. I'm not trying to be too scientific about the game. I'm just I'm a guy, you're a guy, there's dudes over here, there's gals over here. They just want to think like, oh, what's this game like, you know, and just give it to them straight in, you know, a fun way if I can. Add a bit of flair into it, you know, make the game as interesting or uninteresting as it needs to be. What stood out to me, what struck me as exciting, what was funny, what was weird, what would I like to see, and just write it down on the piece of paper. And then I go, cool, I'll go do that again. And I do this on repeat 4 times. Play the game, write about it, play the game, write about it, play the game, write about it. And then once that's done, I have a quick read over the script just to make sure that's not an incoherent mess. And, you know, go from there. And then from that point, it's just like record the audio, which is my least favorite part of it. I mean, you're a sound guy and I'm not a sound guy. And all the other things that you can do, the playing the game, writing about it, editing the video, you have like, you know how that's going to go. You have complete control over it. Sitting down in front of a microphone in a room, trying to get your voice right, trying to do these long sessions and stuff. It's, I can't tell you how many mistakes I make over the course of like, if there's like a 15-minute review, I promise you it took about 45 to 60 minutes of me talking with tons of mistakes in between, to the point where at the end of a session, I'm just like a sweaty mess with like a really sore throat. Like it's so bad. And that gets done. I then go and edit it down, all the mistakes out, which is just me sitting here sadly listening to myself. It's, I don't know if you're the kind of guy who like struggles listening to themselves speak. It's like torturous for me. It's really, really bad. And the whole time you're doing this, right, once you end up with, you know, your video clips, your voice work and stuff, all of this, right, the whole thing, you don't know how the video is going to work, right? It's just pieces on a plate. None of them are put together. You don't know if the video is going to be coherent, if it's going to work well. I just kind of try to trust the process. I just go, what I wrote is what I wrote. It's how I felt. What I sound like is hopefully what I sound like. I don't try to do any cool things we're talking. It's just, this is my talky voice, I guess you could say. It's like my presentation-y voice. I have a way of speaking and it just comes out and we go with it. And hopefully it sounds good. And then once you start putting it together, you know, you've made your artwork in Canva, etc. You've picked out your pieces of music that you liked from the games. Like if I usually have some tracks that I like that I'm listening to that I'll try throw in there, but at the moment in time, I always try to get as much music from the game as I can, and then use what I think would be suitable background music to have running under the track, and then use maybe a few pieces of music to highlight during the video. But it's only when you actually start putting it together in the editing software does anything seem like a good thing. As soon as I start seeing the actual process, like the actual thing in front of me, and I can watch 1 minute of the video and hear myself speaking, I go, all right, now we're cooking. This is good. I think the whole thing is a mess until it all comes together, and somehow it always somehow seems to come together, I guess you could say. There's a lot of like downtime and things between this, you know, the videos. Like if a video is maybe like an hour long, it would probably take me about a month to do. And it's because like I work a lot during the day. I work from, I think it's about 9:30 to 6:30 on a weekday. And I want to make sure that I spend time with my cats and my partner and stuff, and like maybe play like a not old game in between it here and there. But most days I probably spend about like 2 or 3 hours just doing something with the video and trying to get it moving along. I try not to beat myself up too much about how long it takes to do, because in the past, especially during the pandemic era, I was like playing hours a day, writing hours a day, editing hours a day, just because I got really into it. And that's like a recipe for burnout if you're going to do that. Now I do like, if I can only do an hour a day, that's okay. At least I've done an hour a day. If I have time to do 5 hours a day, great. I feel really productive, but I'm not going to hold that against myself for later. It's just, you know, it gets done when it gets done, and I make sure to try have fun. That rhymed, so.
I really like that. I think that's a very healthy approach. It kind of protects yourself from burnout, as you said. And that's something I'm definitely going to keep tucked away in the back of my head, because I definitely, and I've heard you mention this about yourself before, that you have kind of a workaholic nature. I definitely get like really, like I make self-imposed deadlines, and then I feel really bad if they come and go.
Oh,
So,
there's literally no way like you won't feel bad. If you're like me, there's just like this always, if you feel like you've something to do, it's just gonna eat away at you until it's done.
Yes.
It's hard to overcome, but you just remember it's just you being hard on yourself. That's it. No one's harder on yourself than you are, and just remember that.
one thing also that I love about your videos is you're quite merciful to developers. I like that you're always like, even if you're playing the most just, I don't know how else to say it, crap game, you always try to find something good about it. Or something, at least you're like, I see what you were trying to do, even if it just fell super flat. And I really appreciate that about your reviews. But I also really appreciate the love and attention that you give to sound design and music in your games. And I'm just kind of wondering where that comes from for you. Is it because you make music too, or it's just something that speaks to you?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. I suppose just to answer on the topic of like, do I make music? Like I've, throughout the years, I've learned a little bit of instruments here and there. Like I played bass for a lot when I was younger. I dabbled in some drums from time to time, bit of guitar, like the basic instruments, I guess you could say. And one of my things is like, I always had a hard time kind of committing to stuff. I would pick something up for a couple of months, obsess over it, and then just drop it at the drop of a hat. Which is why I'm quite amazed that this YouTube thing has managed to go on as long as it has. I think that's the one kind of thing that's broken the mold, so to speak. But in terms of making music and stuff, not really my thing that I've ever done. It's one of those things what I've always wanted to do, but I've just never, I suppose, had the time. Life kind of gets in the way. But my love of music and games kind of go hand in hand. I've always been very acutely aware of music in video games. I think like one of my earliest memories of playing a video game is Sonic the Hedgehog and hearing Green Hill Zone for the first time and just kind of, melting away at hearing that and just thinking, wow, I love whatever this is. I don't know what it is, but I love it. And then throughout the years, you get similar experiences in games where music just really stands out to you and kind of just resonates with you and you love hearing it. And as I grew older and began to listen to, just music on the radio and on TV and stuff, like I would spend a lot of time watching like music television shows as a kid, always fascinated with music videos, but also the music that accompanies them, So that sort of stuff went hand in hand. And I think the big one for me, and where it really started to kick in, was the first time that I ever played Jet Set Radio Future on the Xbox. My brother, one Christmas, he came over, he had an Xbox and he went, I'll give you a lend of this to play for a little while, which is like a very Irish thing. I'll give you a lend of this and you can play it for a small amount of time. It's like a big option, like a big object. I'm like, yeah, cool, that sounds great. And we had this little disc that is like a combo pack of Sega GT 2002, which is like a little racing game. And it also had Jet Set Radio Future. And I've heard about Jet Set Radio. I'd seen it on the Dreamcast, but I never had a Dreamcast growing up, so I never played it. And I remember playing that game and like never like hearing music like that before in my life, or never kind of having this explosion of visuals and style and music just combined together to like just, I was almost like in awe playing the thing. And one thing that I'll always say about Jet Set Radio Future is that I don't think it's like necessarily a very good video game. It has a lot of problems related to like its control and its design and a few other things, but it was one of those moments where I was like, I really don't care how good or bad this game is. I love it all the same. I think it's like one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And, as I got older, I began to get more of an appreciation for, a game isn't just, like a flat circle. It's not just its gameplay. it's not just you can play a game and go, oh yeah, I don't like playing this or whichever, but like a game isn't just that. What's beautiful about video games is that it's this melding of like narrative, interactivity, art, concept, music, all in one. You know, there's so many parts to a video game that, you know, even if a game may not be the most pleasing on I guess like a gameplay level, that doesn't mean it's not entirely without merit. It doesn't mean that there's things that you can't learn from it or things that you can't appreciate about it in that sense as well. And I mean, throughout the years of like watching video game reviews and stuff, you know, like I always seen like there's this kind of turn towards people being really, I don't know, I don't want to say mean to games, because I don't think you can be like mean to a game. Right. But some people kind of make games, I guess, in like, you know, like people will do reviews in bad faith where they'll highlight a lot of the negatives. And I thought to myself, well, look, if people are going to spend a lot of time highlighting the negatives and hammering that down, maybe I can kind of look at a game and try to say, well, look, maybe there are things that are cool about it, or maybe there's things that are good about it that people don't talk about, because I don't think like a developer ever goes in with the intention of making a bad video game. And a lot of times video games might end up bad due to circumstances out of their control, publisher meddling, time limits, you know, crunch, a lot of things that they just have no control over. And I don't think that if a game is immediately dissatisfying to play, that there isn't still something great, or a lot of people put a lot of work into this, you know? So why not dive in and try to find out what is cool about this game and what can we learn from it? Because I always think to myself, like, who am I to just on these games that people spent their life making, you know? Who am I to just pick up any old random thing from the internet and go, this is awful, this is trash, this is irredeemable, and just throw out negative stuff into it? Like, I'm not going to say I'm someone who will like defend every game, or I'm trying to say every bad game is good or something. I just don't think it's black and white, you know? I think everybody has their own lens in how they view this art form. If you want to call it an art form, I think it's important to know that people can find their own things from each individual game. So that's something I always try to get across with them. Try to show the best of a bad situation, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love that approach, and I think that's one of the things that keeps me coming back to your videos is, you know, it may not always be worth playing some of the games that you cover. Like, you know, am I actually going to sit down, download this and play this? Probably not, but it's really cool to know, like, oh, but there is this one thing that's really cool about it. This one track is just like such a banger, or it's like even some of the games are just really aren't very good. It's like there might be one area where the textures are just so nice and you're like, man, somebody really got to play with that. And and that is the other thing I think a lot of gamers don't necessarily understand is like you said, nobody goes out to try to make a bad game, especially the audio people. Like, we're just like thrilled to be there working on it. And so if it ever turns out poorly, it's like, it's because the publisher's like, we're out of money, you got 1 week. And
it's like, if you want this game to come out, or do you want it to be cancelled?
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. And it's like, I mean, that stuff was bad back then. It's even like, it's more catastrophic now. So I can't even imagine what it's like to be in a situation like that. But it's just cool. I just think like so many of these games don't even get the time of day. And I think if they're going to get like the one little spotlight to be seen by like a few thousand people, I don't think it's going to be some asshole just trying to drag it down. Let's just have a bit of fun. Maybe this isn't something that you're going to want to play, but like this is the only time you're going to see it in action. Let's see what it's got cooking. So it's I think you know it's fun for me too. I like learning about it. Maybe it's not always the funnest thing to play, but I always feel like I'm taking something away after the experience. So it's pretty cool. Have you
ever had a developer reach out to you from one of these like long lost games and just say that they saw your video or anything like that? I'm always just kind of curious.
Yeah, surprisingly, and on a couple of videos, and I'm always very taken aback by it. Like it makes sense, right? I feel like if you've made one of these games, it would, you know, you'd want to look up and see what people think about it nowadays, because you probably have all this knowledge of working on it and getting it out there. And especially in the pre-internet days, you wouldn't really know what people are thinking about or how it affected them, and how, you know, this weird legacy they might not even know that they have. But I think one that stands out to me in particular would be Tim White, who did a lot of the music for the Wipeout games, a lot of the Psygnosis games. Mm-hmm. You know, during that time, he did tons of music for across a lot of their games. Like he reached out and he's like, wow, this is like almost like a video CV of all the work that I barely even remember doing. Like this is insane, you know? And I think it was just nice to see that I could create something that was like a look back of like a memory lane for them. Gonna see how they experienced it and then how they factor into it. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's another reason why I don't want to be like on people's work, because you never know who's going to view it. And like, I don't want to be the guy who's like dunking on something and then the poor soul who made it is like, I thought it was okay, you know? Like that's not cool.
Yeah.
But it's almost always music guys. I had a similar one where the dude who did the music for a game called Reloaded, which is like a really underrated soundtrack for a PlayStation game. Really, really great. That guy came across one of my mix videos that I did where I just throw a load of PlayStation music into a mix. And he was like really taken aback. He's like, wow, I didn't even know people still listen to this or like this, you know? And the comments were full of people like bigging up his track. Wow. So I think it's just really nice for, like, I don't even think of it as a way of like me feeling kind of like honored to see them. Like, I think it's really cool that people checked it out, but I think it's nice that the developers or the people who worked on these games, they can come in and see people speak highly of their work, or that there's anybody out there still doing that. I think it's really, it must be really fun. It must be really cool for them.
Yeah, it's interesting. The more time, so I spent obviously most of my life as a fan of video games, and now I'm kind of like, I've been able to work on games, and I'm now hanging out with a lot of just people on kind of the other side of the curtain. And it is, I think people are really surprised that stuff they made that long ago still resonates with people, even if it wasn't necessarily a product that was like designed to have a lasting impact, like a film. You know, it's like, this is a licensed kids game. But like, that's kind of the power, I think, of video games marrying all these art forms together, is like, it really impacts you and hits you on a level that no other art form really can.
It's crazy. It really does. And I think like every game has its fans. Every single one. Like whoever's out there, whatever you made, like you might think no one played this. I guarantee you go and look at a long play on YouTube. Someone is gushing over your game right now. It's their childhood. It's everything to them. I promise you. It's crazy.
Yes. There's a lot of titles that come to mind where I'm almost just wanting to see if that's the case or not. But
I promise you, go, surely nobody could like this. And you go into the comments. No, wait. Here they are. Here they are.
I'm going to say you have a very wide knowledge. So you would have a really good knowledge of like some really good examples of retro sound design and some bad. And when we talk about the bad, we're obviously factoring in like, who knows what happened. I'm sure nobody meant to do a bad job, but it is kind of fun to just be like, whew, that did not hold up so well. So do you have any standouts for like excellent sound design, and then maybe one or two that are like, oh, that is not great to listen to?
One, right, that always stood out to me. I'm a really big fan of the Sega, the Yamaha sound chip that's used in the Sega Mega Drive or the Sega Genesis. I think it's one of those things where, depending on how it's used, it can create some of the best music you will ever hear in a video game, or subsequently the worst you will ever hear. I know the Gems sound driver gets a lot of flack for that stuff. But there's one game in particular that really stands out to me as like incredible sound design. Like I can't even believe like it's coming out of this console kind of deal. And that would be the soundtrack for The Adventures of Batman and Robin by Jesper Kyd. Have you ever had a chance to hear about it before?
I haven't.
It's the kind of soundtrack, it's the kind of thing where someone will possibly love this or someone will hate it. But this dude like just completely I'm gonna say just like demolishes the sound chip with the sort of stuff that's coming out of it. It's the kind of noises that you would never. It's almost like if someone made like a heavy metal album or like a very heavy industrial album on this sound chip that just happened to drop it into a Batman game, and every single level is like some of the hardest, most pulling stuff you've ever heard. Like just abrasive noise. I think the closest thing I could describe it to is if someone tried to do like a Death Grips album in a video game in like 1995. It's very, very strange, right? And I don't know if that analogy holds up very well, but it's like just an assault of noise. And I'm always like quite literally blown away by the way it sounds. Like it doesn't sound like it is possible on this console. It doesn't sound like it's even imaginable, but I am always blown away by how good it sounds. At least in my ears anyway. It's a bit harsh, it's a bit abrasive, but it's like it's so powerful and so intense that I can never get enough of it.
That's awesome. How about one that's like, that was a miss?
A swing and a miss. One that usually sticks out to me is similar on the Sega front is Sonic Spinball, which is where you go from like all this beautiful Sonic music, which is like some of the highlights that you'd hear on the console, to like, what if an American team made a Sonic game using the Gem sound driver, and it's just like a mess of like very, very harsh sounds that interrupt whatever sort of melody is going on there. Like you're afraid to hit something in case it might blow out your eardrum, which is which is pretty rough. But I think another, like, going back to South Park, which I'm going to bring up forever because there's so many weird, interesting parts about that game. The Appaloosa port of that, right? So the original South Park game was built on the Turok engine for the N64.
Okay.
So the entire game is built around being on a cartridge, so to speak. And in the process of porting it to the PlayStation, something that didn't really happen too often is that games from the N64 would be ported to the PlayStation. And porting cart music over to a CD game, at least in the way that they tried to do it, it just completely degraded the quality of this already very limited cart music in there. No. So you have like a really, really poor rip of this really like limited music, and the entire process of it makes it go from like a kind of happy, jaunty tune to like just almost migraine inducing if you're listening to it for 10 minutes or more. And I don't know what they did as well, but they upped the amount of voice sound effects. Like every time you do everything in that game, Stan or Kyle or Cartman or Kenny will say something, and they've maybe like 2 voice lines per character. So you're just getting assaulted with this very harsh noise and the same sound effect over and over again. All of it is like bit crushed and just poor quality, and it's just a miserable experience to sit through. I'm like, I can't believe they've done this.
Yeah.
It's so bad. And if you go and play, like, there's like a PC port of it, you can hear all of this music and all of these sound effects in like the best audio quality imaginable, and it's good. The music is nice, but it just shows how like how the quality and how it's transferred over in ports can like really just ruin a game's sound and any sort of positive aspects the music has going for it. So it's pretty wild. That always just stood out to me.
Wow, that kind of reminds me a little bit of I only recently got into like Sega Dreamcast stuff, but the soundtrack to Skies of Arcadia is really top notch. It's good, but that version has a lot of really high random encounters, which they fixed in the GameCube. So I thought, okay, I'll play the GameCube version. But something just didn't quite work when they brought it over. It's just not the same. It doesn't have the same juiciness as the Dreamcast version. So
it's tough, right? And that's unfortunately like a pretty common thing. You'll often get a lot of games like that where there's no definitive version. Almost every version has like a perk or a negative, and you really have to factor in what is good for you. Do you want more random encounters, or do you want like a worse soundtrack overall? And that's a pretty hard one to choose between, right? Both seem like pretty important. Do you want to waste your time, or do you want to have the time that you're spending be not as great because of a lesser soundtrack?
Well, especially for me too, like JRPGs, I'm kind of a sucker for them, and I don't really even like them that much. You know, like gameplay wise, they're just not my favorite genre, but they always have just the best vibe, and a huge part of that is the music. So it really is a tough one for me. I ended up not playing it, tough. But anyway,
it's hard. I do think that's a hard one to get into, but I appreciate that you tried it. Everybody should try Skies of Arcadia at least once. It's pretty cool.
All right, so my picks for best, I'm gonna pick two. One is Ocarina of Time. Absolutely
classic,
burned in my head, and it's pretty crazy. Even though, you know, I'm not really comparing it to AAA of like modern day games, but you just think like they had a very limited amount of sounds from a library and what they could fit on the N64, and the way they use like pitch and just all this modulation to really make expressive, iconic sounds. I played it again this year for the first time in many years, and it was just like, wow, this is one of the most...
It holds up.
It so does, well. Especially the sound is so expressive, I would say, even if it is a little, you know, the actual sound quality itself, because of the hardware, is pretty limited. But wow, they really painted a picture.
It's one of like the most... I don't think there's so many places that you can go. Like it has so many iconic tunes. Like every major location you go to, every major thing that happens, there's just like some sort of piece of music attached to it that I feel like you'd never forget, really. Maybe like, I mean, I played it when I was a kid, and I feel like that was one of my iconic games, you know, one of those games that really defined who I'd become as a gamer. So like when people come to me and they're like, oh, I don't like Ocarina of Time, I'm like, how could you? How could you not love this? This was the greatest thing ever in 98, you know? But like, yeah, man, if anytime I boot up, sometimes I boot up Ocarina of Time just to listen to the main menu theme, just to see Link ride around an opponent for a bit. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, that one piano chord just takes you right there.
It's amazing.
And then my pick for worst is, now there's some really just bad ones like you mentioned, but one that it's tragic because I love the game so much, is Super Puzzle Fighter 2. I love that game. Have you played it?
It's my favorite puzzle game of all time. I think it is possibly. Okay. Either that or Lumines. They're like 2 for 2 for me, but I'm a diehard puzzle fighter. Don't you worry.
Okay. So I absolutely love that game. For some reason though, I don't know what it is. I think it's just the tone of the sound effects themselves. Like they just... it's just not one of those games I really want to listen to for a long period of time, because I feel like the sounds just kind of clash with the music, and they're just a little bit annoying to me. So even though I absolutely love that game, I'm going to put that one on my list of not so great.
Because it's got a lot of... Because I think that game has some pretty good background music, but a lot of the block shattering and a lot of the sound effects from like character to character are very like, you know, like shattering at odds with it. It's very, very noisy and overwhelming. So yeah, I could see that for sure. I think when I played it, I don't know if I was playing it on the PS1 when I was a kid, but I think they had some like sweet arranged soundtracks. Sometimes Capcom would put like arranged versions in it as well. I just remember this cool little tune that would play on, you know, Donovan stage. I don't know if you know.
Yeah,
he's like a Darkstalkers character, and that's where I discovered him. I never played Darkstalkers. I was like, who the hell is Donovan? He's got a good tune. He's got a good song anyway.
And my other one, I still laugh out loud every single time, is the Cruisin' USA soundtrack. It's just like next.
Yeah.
Depending on what kind of person you are, it's either the best or the worst thing, but... I think I saw a comment one time that described it as someone left Dad in the room with the karaoke machine.
That describes so many Midway games. Like immediately, like it's I personally love it, but I get why it is what it is.
It is.
Let's just put it that way.
It exists.
It is what it is. It's pure cruising. Don't you worry.
Right on. Well, Sean, it's been super duper fun talking to you, man. I've had so much fun chatting with you. I love your work. Can you tell everybody where they can find you and how they can keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, sure, man. First off, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a really fun chat. I think it's a really cool podcast. I think we delved into a lot of interesting stuff that I don't think I would have got to chat about elsewhere. So thanks for going in deep and covering the hard hitting questions. It's been it's a lot of fun. If you want to catch my videos, you can see me on YouTube. My name is Seanson. It's spelled the Irish way. So Seanson. It's probably on the screen somewhere at some point during this video. I put out videos as much as I can. And if you like learning about weird games that came out on the PlayStation 1 that you might not have heard about, cool Japanese oddities that you also might not have heard about, or big, long videos diving into the entire catalogs of publishers and developers, well, this is the place to be. That, and I'm also the Irish Mr. Beast, so, I will possibly pay you to watch my video. Maybe not, but it could happen. You never know.
Can I pay you in Dreamcast demo discs? Actually, if anybody asked me that, I would say absolutely. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I got a whole folder for that thing. Don't worry. My Cash Money folder of Dreamcast demo discs. I got to stop accepting demo discs. It's getting pretty bad. It's getting pretty bad in that room. I'm not going to lie.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you again. And you have a tremendous rest of your day. Hey, thank you everyone for listening to that interview with Seanson. I really hope that you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed recording it. Don't forget to check out Sean's channel in the description. Head over to his page, watch his hours and hours of content, and give him a like, subscribe, share, all that stuff. Also, don't forget to check out the work of Pumodi. Again, you can find all that cool stuff in the description. And once again, please throw me some of that sweet dopamine with a subscribe. And if you're feeling festive, check out my merch store. All of the links will be in the description below. I'm gonna have a lot of description writing to do this time around. All right, don't forget how amazing you are, how loved you are. You make this world a better place to be, and I hope that you have a happy Thanksgiving. Unless you live outside the US, then have a nice November.
Bye-bye now.